I'm not saying I have all the fault, but I was a very insensitive husband. Compromise was the very first job I did. They now gave me a bottle of Sprite. That was my first pay.
Your first pay was a bottle of Sprite.
Bottle of Sprite. Then there was one. Karishika,
Queen.
Lucifer,
Prince of Darkness. Karishika.
The greatest prison is the artist who can't practice his art. There's no method of dealing with a problem better than confronting the problem. So music wasn't fair to me on that score. I would do the conducting from my work with my t-shirt and my tie.
So your work shirt and tie.
Work shirt and tie. So they'll know that we are not just ordinary executive corporate
conductor.
Yes. I've gone through pain. After that one, I went to a second divorce.
Yes.
At some point, my wife died.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
My son died. I came to Lagos actually to do a master's, like I told you, because my father is a professor.
Yes.
I know they're high on academic. So unfortunately, I'm not the smartest in the family. But he insisted.
Yeah.
So I came to Lagos. I got admission in Unilag to do my master's in mass comm.
Yes.
So I asked a friend to check for me, to check if I had gotten admission.
Right.
He checked 2 times and said I didn't get admission.
Right.
So I was happy. So message came from home that he should check again. So he went and checked. He said the only place he hasn't checked is the merit list, and there's nowhere I'll be there. And incidentally, I was there. I was number 11.
Right.
So I had to do the masters.
Yeah.
So I was living with my cousin at the time. I'm just telling you how I got into the music. So I was working. I got a job while doing the masters, which I never really finished.
Right.
So I was doing. I have this cousin of mine who bought a Bedford bus. We were living at Ejigbo at the time.
Right.
So and I was working in an advert agency, one small part-time job. So in the evening when he closes from work with his Bedford, he would call me. And then he had no conductor, so I would do the conducting from my work with my t-shirt and my tie. You understand?
You were a conductor for him?
I would do conductor for him now. Because we close work by 5, we do the thing till about 8:30.
So your work shirt and tie.
Work shirt and tie. So they'll know that we are not just ordinary executive corporate conductor. So I will be, it's not easy calculating those who has what change. On one time like that, I had this wahala with one lady. I miscalculated the change, and she dragged my tie. Well. So while we were dragging, a friend of mine who was also in a bus came. I said, Stanley, I have known him from way back.
Right.
I said, what's happening with you? Are you still doing music? Because I was doing music in school.
Right.
I was reading mass comm, but I was doing shows, I said, okay. So he said he had this friend who he wanted me to meet.
Right. So wait, it was in this incident when you were conducting that you were having this issue.
And when the guy was still dragging me, somebody came and
somebody saw you.
That guy, his name is I've forgotten his name, Casey Ekunife. I still remember he's in the US now alone.
Right. So that's why he came and said, "Are you still singing?"
So now I said, Stanley, what are you doing? I said, come see the wahala. And narrator said, Stanley Mbano. So he said, okay, I used to do music. I said, yeah,
wow.
I do music. So okay. So he now introduced me to Clink Studios. So we stayed there and waited for Sammy. And Sammy came.
Yeah.
So after a while, I told my cousin, I can't be doing this.
Conductor work again.
Conductor work again. So I started working with Sammy, and that's, I would write and sing, Sammy would produce.
Yes.
I now remember this because of that compromise.
Right.
Compromise was the very first job I did, because I had done so many jobs in fact, it was the second job I did.
Right, okay.
The first job I did was one guy gave me through a friend of mine, he's late now, JT Tom West.
JT Tom West, yes.
Remember JT Tom was my very, in fact, I was living with him at some point.
Right.
So they said I was working with Sammy, something had happened, I and Sammy had just, like every time now.
Yeah.
JT said, Stanley, come and do this thing. Have you done any soundtrack before? I said, no, but I've been working with Sammy. So, okay, come and sit down. They now told me the thing. They now gave me a bottle of Sprite. That was my first pay.
Your first pay was a bottle of Sprite?
Bottle of Sprite. And they promised that if they use the music,
they
would now pay me something. So months, some weeks, and after a while, they said they didn't use the music. It was after like 6 months I found out that they had used the music 3 times.
They will.
Yeah. if I see, I don't remember the guy luckily, but if I see that guy, he will pay me.
Yes.
You know, so that's how we started.
That was the first one.
The very first one. Then Compromise was the second one that came.
Yes.
You know, and then I got Compromise. Yeah. But before Compromise, I had done Not My Will. I had done so many other jobs for Sammy. And you know how it is to work with Sammy. Sammy is highly gifted and highly impatient. and Sammy affected, when I came into Lagos, I wasn't just living with one person. Right. You know, I was doing music, and a lot of my family members and cousins didn't like the fact that I had left my master's program to come and do music. Become a vagabond in Lagos. To become a vagabond. Because they call me a vagabond in Lagos because you'll be going from studio to studio to studio. Yeah. So, but it was passion is a positive madness. So we were just doing I and Sammy. And that's how it is. Then. But what gave me my real break after I stopped working with Sammy was one movie called Evil Genius. Yes. That one was another big one. Yes. Then there was one. Karishika, Queen. Lucifer, Prince of Darkness. Karishika.
Oh yes. Yeah. You've produced, recorded, according to an interview that I saw, whether produced or recorded or mastered, over 10,000 songs.
They said 15,000.
Over 15,000 songs?
Yes, now I was surprised. Yes. And it wasn't just coming from a Nigerian media, it was coming from outside. So but at that time, like I said, passion is a positive madness. You just want to do it, you enjoy doing it. Yes. And you understand, these people see I'm enjoying this thing and they still pay me. Okay, no wahala now, so I was doing it. But the problem was I didn't know how my father was going to react. Yes. You know, because one, I wasn't working. He didn't understand what I was doing. Yeah. And I was working in an advertising agency at month. I told you. Yes. Sammy convinced me to leave. Right. You know, was
that Ruyi Communications? Was that the agency?
Yeah, I was with Ruyi at one time. How did you know this?
Yeah.
So Sammy convinced me that.
I mean, Ruyi, for those who don't know, is owned by Sonny Rabon.
I worked under Sonny Rabon. Yes. There are so many other places I worked. In fact, there's one I worked at for 3 days. Sammy wouldn't let me do the job. So Sammy tell me, resign or they'll sack you. I said, Sammy, resignation, sack, is it not unemployment? Please now. Sammy won't allow me because he will carry me around. Yeah. And he said, Stanley, you won't die. I never die. You know, so Sammy affected my life positively. Yeah. Because of the work rate and the intensity, that's what led to at least the first divorce that you dealt with. Oh yeah, that was the most pain. You know, the first cut is always my first divorce was I have my own share. You know, when most people, when they talk about their problems or in a marriage or in a relationship, they are quick to x-ray the other person's own fault. But I think, I'm not saying I have all the fault, but I was a very insensitive husband. No, I was very insensitive. No, I blame myself that one.
How do you mean? What does insensitive mean?
No, I won't care now. And sometimes my wife will do her hair. I say, I'm going to the studio, come oh. You know, and that's not nice now. Yeah. How about there? I won't know because there was a time I was doing all the job. And people would call me from London and pay my ticket and I'll go and do the music. And it was nice. Yeah. And
you're thinking to yourself, but I'm providing for the family.
But so I'm giving you money. And you see sometimes the first rule of love is presence.
Yes.
You understand?
Yes.
You can give all the money, but the first rule of love
is presence.
It wasn't about the money. At some point, you give her the money. When you come back, it's there. So you have to be present. I was present for the music that I love. Because I was going from studio to studio to studio to studio to studio. Yeah. And at night, you say, I say, I'm working here. Sam is calling me here. And you see producers, you know. And to be prolific means you're doing it a lot.
Yeah, of course.
And to be a professional means you're doing it well.
Well, so a lot and well, those are two pressures. A lot
and well, because they're paying you well.
Yes.
So that when I look back at that, I say, that is everything comes at a cost. You know, the economists call it an opportunity cost. So on that first marriage, I was very, very insensitive. If I was more mature, of course I married very. If I was wondering why wasn't she seeing, you know, what I was seeing and all the work I was doing, but no. Yeah. I failed on that score. Right. I failed on that score. So. Yeah. When I write songs about pain, betrayed love, heartbreak,
Yeah.
I always go back there.
Back.
Because the first day she looked at me and she said, "Lou, I can't take this anymore." Hey, I knew she was saying the truth. So I didn't want to argue, you know. So that's part of the cost of the music. So luckily, one soundtrack came. I said, "Okay, I'm going now." So I went and did the soundtrack. You know, and it was I don't remember. It was Living Without Love.
Right.
I would live without your love. I'll move on. All those saying things
to yourself,
to console myself, stupid things to console myself, instead of to go and beg the woman. So that's the cost, you know. But it's made me a wiser person.
Right.
It's made me. I've gone through pain. After that one, I went to a second divorce.
Yes.
I went to a second divorce. At some point, my wife died.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
My son died.
Oof.
Yes. When I sing, Chimo, you know, it's from my heart. I feel it helps me. It's my exhaust. My exhaust pipe for those things. And it helps me deal with it to some level. But I tell you, there's no method of dealing with a problem better than confronting the problem. So music wasn't fair to me on that score. I was using it to escape. When I should have just gone.
Focused on it. And focused on the problem.
Because some things that where they sweet you today, at some point they will hurt you.
Yeah.
You know, so that's how it's been a blessing and it's been a curse.
Yeah.
But I'm happy now where I am. I'm happily married. My kids are doing well. And I'm still recording music and doing other things, you know.
It's a travesty that you don't have a national award yet. It's a travesty. So, I mean, I know that you want to move on from it and be like, you know, yes, it didn't rob me. But let's pause and talk about it. You know, do you think that this industry has valued your work and your singular talent as it should have?
Nobody on earth is ever meets commensurate value. That's the cost of the art. Bob Marley, for instance, wasn't even so popular in Jamaica. Even Michael Jackson at some point was saying that Sony Records were, everybody is worse in our environment. The average Nigerian self is even really appreciated. Is it really appreciated?
I get that.
I personally, if you appreciate me, fine. If you don't, fine. But my greatest appreciation is that you recognize my art.
Yeah.
You understand? It's a gift. You recognize my art. Then, you know, the appreciation could come monetarily, award. You understand? Those things are really nice. But the greatest prison is the artist who can't practice his art. If you have a song, you can write a song, nobody sings it. It's crazy. But even if you don't make money, and like there was a time people would do a song and give it to pirates to play. And they don't make any money, really. So the prison is when you have an art you can't express or portray. I'm not totally carefree, you know, but I'm carefree to a large extent. Yes, I want to live long. I want to live long. And my grandmother lived for 133 years.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Her own father lived for 141 years. She says if you want to live long, have an open heart and open palms.
Open heart and open palms.
Yeah, so things will enter and things will leave. If you hold anything tight, it will kill you. So that's the premise where I live my life. To be happy, happiness is a choice I've made.